Now, New York's #1 news, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Happening right now at 6, an extraordinary moment in American political history. President Biden dropping out of the race for the White House after mounting pressure from those within his own party.
The president endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris, a large number of other Democrats doing the same, but her nomination is not guaranteed. We are walking you through the next steps.
Also ahead, my interview with Mayor Adams, who is also a delegate. The mayor's answer when I ask him whether he is ready to endorse Vice President Harris. Plus, will this shakeup invigorate the Democratic Party? Good morning on a busy Monday. It is July 22nd. I'm Mike Marza.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Shirlene Allicott. Our coverage of Biden's decision to exit the 2024 race in just a bit. But first, more trouble for New Jersey transit riders. Heather O'Rourke has a check of the commute.
Mainly north and west of New York City. Mike, Shirlene.
Brittany and Heather, thank you. Coming up on 6:02 and to this extraordinary moment in American history. After weeks of mounting pressure from members within his own party, President Biden has officially dropped out of the 2024 race for president.
Yeah, the announcement came yesterday in a letter that was posted to social media addressed to his fellow Americans. Biden endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris to lead the Democratic ticket.
While so much remains uncertain this morning, here's what we can expect. Happening today, Vice President Harris will make her first public appearance since President Biden officially endorsed her. President Biden, who's still in isolation due to COVID, plans to address the nation about this decision sometime later this week. As for the nomination process, the Democratic National Committee telling members to expect next steps in the coming days. The Democratic National Convention, by the way, begins 4 weeks from today.
Eyewitness News anchor Pedro Rivera here now to begin our team coverage. Pedro.
Yeah, it's been quite a few hours.
Oh,
right?
yes.
I mean,
Yes.
just a matter of hours, we heard campaign pundits just going all across the country saying that Biden was committed to another 4 years in office. He's fit to stay there. Even his vice president, Kamala Harris, was given very little notice about the 81-year-old's change of heart to drop out of the race.
At 1:46 Sunday afternoon, in an unprecedented and historic move, President Biden dropping out of the 2024 race for the White House, addressing a letter to my fellow Americans, reading, "I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country," wrote the 81-year-old commander-in-chief, "for me to step down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term." His decision and sudden reversal about staying in the race officially ended his re-election bid and quickly followed up who should take the top of the ticket in November. Today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this.
Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it?
President Biden told the vice president about his decision moments before he went public. Kamala Harris, now with a declaration of her own. "I am honored to have the president's endorsement, and my intention is to earn and win this nomination." We're told Harris spent much of Sunday calling party leaders and others shoring up her support. The very same high-profile Democrats, both New Yorkers, who urged Biden to abandon 4 years in the Oval Office, quickly issued words of presidential praise. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries writing, "America is a better place today because of President Joe Biden has led us with his intellect, grace, and dignity. We are forever grateful." Joe Biden has not only been a great president and great legislative leader, but he is truly an amazing human being. His decision, of course, was not easy, but once again put his country, his party, and our future first. But Schumer, Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, and even former President Barack Obama so far have not offered endorsements of Kamala Harris as the Democratic presidential nominee. As for President Biden's now former opponent, crooked Joe Biden was not fit to run for president, wrote former President Donald Trump, and is certainly not fit to serve, and never was. "We will suffer greatly because of his presidency, and we will remedy the damage he has done very quickly."
Biden is now the first sitting U.S. president to withdraw from re-election since Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1968. Johnson, big difference here, dropped out 7 months before the election. Biden leads the race with about 100 days until Americans cast their votes, giving Democrats very little time to unite and find a candidate to get behind. It looks like Kamala Harris is getting a lot of endorsements, but still some key major endorsements. Barack Obama, as we mentioned, has yet to stand behind her.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and you'll hear from Mayor Adams in just a moment, the delegate dance that the delegates are doing right now to see exactly how this process plays out. Meanwhile, the Republicans planning for whoever they're going to face. Pedro, thank you. We should mention Trump running mate J.D. Vance hitting the campaign trail later on today. And in a new TV interview, he argued if Mr. Biden can't run for re-election, he shouldn't be running the country right now.
There's a constitutional process, the 25th Amendment. If Joe Biden can't run for president, he can't serve as president. And if they want to take him down because he's mentally incapable of serving, invoke the 25th Amendment.
House Speaker Mike Johnson issuing a similar message in a statement, writing, Joe Biden is not fit to run for president. He is not fit to serve as president. He must resign the office immediately.
Sources say after receiving the president's endorsement yesterday, Vice President Harris spent more than 10 hours placing calls to over 100 party leaders, members of Congress, governors, labor leaders, and others. On each of those calls, she made clear that she plans to work hard to earn the Democratic nomination in her own right. So what comes next as Harris works to secure the support that she needs? Eyewitness News reporter Phil Tate is live in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, outside the office of Hakeem Jeffries. Phil, good morning.
Yeah, Charlene, good morning. It's been less than 24 hours since President Joe Biden dropped out of the race, and now Vice President Kamala Harris looks to be at the top of the ticket and to lead the party. The big question, like you said, what comes next? She's going to have to get those votes from the more than 4,700 delegates in the party in order for her to secure that nomination. Now, these are the folks that had originally backed Biden when he was in the race. And who are these people? Those are the elected officials, former presidents, and other party elders known as superdelegates. Now, while Joe Biden has endorsed Harris, he believes she is the right person to take over the job as president, become his successor, and challenge Trump. Now, Representative Hakeem Jeffries spoke out last night with the convention just weeks away.
We will do what's necessary over the next few weeks to prepare for the convention. It'll be an exciting convention in Chicago. We'll put on full display our agenda for the American people and do what is necessary in order to leave that convention unified, get the job done, work as hard as we can, day after day, week after week, month after month, and be successful on November 5th.
Now, important to note, even with the president's backing, it remains unclear if Harris will become the nominee or what process the Democratic Party would take to select an alternative. While there is no guarantee, so far, no one has said they will challenge her, and those who may be considering, maybe some of the same Democrats she's considering asking to be her running mate. Well, some of the leading Democrats that could be Harris's potential VP pick: New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and PA Governor Josh Shapiro. Now, the New York State Democratic Committee has already endorsed her, although there has been no endorsement yet from Representative Hakeem Jeffries or Senator Chuck Schumer. We're in Fort Greene this morning. I'm Phil Tate, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, Phil, thank you. There are nearly 4,000 delegates who will officially choose the Democratic Party's nominee, and one of them is New York Mayor Adams. I spoke to the mayor last night, and at this point, he is not ready to immediately endorse VP Kamala Harris. Here's some of our conversation.
This is fresh. The announcement just took place. I'm a delegate, and there's a process that we're going to go through, and I'm going to respect that process and allow those who are the party leaders to determine what the next steps are that we will make. Now
that the decision has been made and President Biden has decided that he will not seek re-election, there does already seem to be just an increase of energy. We see that the DNC is already fundraising off of this announcement. Do you sense that same level of energy talking with your fellow Democrats tonight?
Yeah, I think people have let out a sigh of relief. People want clarity. Uncertainty is something that no one wants to live through. We saw after the debate how people felt. There were different opinions on both sides. And I heard people that said he should stay in. I heard people say that he should leave. And so now we have clarity. He gave us the clarity that we need. And so we can't use it as an excuse. Now it's time to forge ahead for the future of the American people.
You can find more of our conversation at ABC7NY. Meanwhile, New Jersey Governor Murphy, who has endorsed Harris, will lead a call of the state's delegation today to try to coalesce the party around her. And New York Governor Hochul releasing a statement endorsing VP Harris. More on her endorsement coming up at the bottom of the hour.
For more reaction to Biden's exit from the 2024 race, let's go to Eyewitness News reporter Lindsay Tuckman. She's live outside the governor's office on the east side. Lindsay, good morning to you.
Good morning, Charlene. The endorsements really were quick to roll in for Vice President Kamala Harris, and for the most part, local Democrats falling in line behind her. And the Harris campaign was quick to capitalize on that, sending out this news release, sharing the list of elected officials across the country that are offering, they say, their full-throated support. It's a long list of statements, multi-pages. Some Democrats, though, are taking a bit of a slower approach, a more wait and see what happens approach to it all. And at this point, just praising Biden instead for his decision and thanking him for his service, but holding back on fully endorsing Harris. Republican officials more critical of the decision. Of course, that's what you probably expect. We do know the vice president, though, did spend hours reaching out to Democratic leaders to shore up that support. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for instance, was quick to endorse the vice president, saying, quote, Kamala Harris will be the next president of the United States. I pledge my full support to ensure her victory in November. Now more than ever, it is crucial that our party and country swiftly unite to defeat Donald Trump and the threat to American democracy. Let's get to work. And then kind of a different tack from the U.S. Senator from New Jersey, Cory Booker, who said this: I am grateful that we have a president whose patriotism and love of country drove him to run and win against demagoguery in 2020, and who now, because of that same fierce love and devotion to his fellow Americans, has decided to be the bridge to a new generation of leaders. So not specifically mentioning Harris. Local congressional leaders, though, also shared their thoughts from both sides of the aisle.
I have absolutely no advice for her. I think right now she is, drinking from a fire hose. She's standing up a campaign. She's potentially fighting for the nomination. She's thinking about who might be her vice presidential running mate.
I'm not surprised that he's not running. From a political view, I also think that it doesn't really matter whether it was him or Kamala Harris or any other Democrat, because they embrace that same agenda that we believe has been hurtful to this country.
And we mentioned local governors. Both the governor of New York and Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey were quick to throw their support behind Harris as well. They were also very steadfast supporters and fundraisers for President Biden up until yesterday. As for the reason we are here outside of Governor Hochul's office, she is holding an event later this morning, a pre-planned event about housing, but we are expecting her to discuss her endorsement of Harris. Live on the East Side, Lindsay Tuckman, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Lindsay, thank you. And with Harris, the current favorite to replace President Biden at the top of the ticket, it is worth looking and taking a look back at her career up until this point. Eyewitness News reporter Darla Miles with more on Harris's background.
America is ready.
Supporters hoping to see the Kamala Harris of old taking on Donald Trump as a presidential candidate, as she did with Mike Pence during the 2020 election campaign.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Her political career began 20 years ago. In 2004, she became the first female district attorney in San Francisco, where she championed same-sex marriage and created an environmental justice unit. In 2010, Harris became the first female attorney general in California, where she won a $20 billion mortgage fraud settlement and enacted sweeping criminal justice reform. In 2017, when elected to the United States Senate, Harris served on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and pushed legislation for maternal health care, rent relief, and fighting hunger. And this is where she grabbed the national spotlight during two separate Supreme Court confirmation hearings.
You're out of order. I'll proceed.
We cannot possibly move forward, Mr. Chairman.
I extend a very warm welcome to
We have not been
Judge
given
Kavanaugh,
an opportunity to have a meaningful
his wife,
hearing
Ashley.
on this nominee.
As vice president, Harris was tasked with voting rights reform and tackling the border crisis, even traveling to Latin America.
Do not come.
But as vice president, Harris seemed to lose some of her swag, becoming more known for her many gaffes and her work as VP. If she does become the Democratic presidential nominee, she would double down on the same messaging and platform as President Biden.
You cannot claim to be for unity if you try to overturn a free and fair election.
And we will hear from Vice President Kamala Harris for the first time Monday morning. She had a previously scheduled appearance on the White House lawn to celebrate the NCAA championship teams. In the newsroom, Darla Miles, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
One more note to pass along. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is reportedly thinking about running for the Democratic nomination for president. That would be a major shift for Mr. Manchin. He left the Democratic Party a couple of months ago and declared himself an independent. So as they say, stay tuned. Brittany?
And humidity continues to build today, but temperatures stay seasonal.
Now, New York's #1 news, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
An historic shakeup in the race for the White House. President Biden bowing out a month after that disastrous debate that caused panic within the Democratic Party.
Vice President Kamala Harris getting the endorsement of the president to lead the ticket. But her nomination, not a done deal. Not yet. We'll tell you what still needs to happen.
Plus, ABC's Jonathan Karl with the challenges Republicans may face with a new candidate on the Democratic side.
First up on this busy Monday morning, you're never more than 7 minutes away from weather and traffic. Let's get right to meteorologist.
All right. Thank you. Back to our coverage of President Biden's decision to drop out of the 2024 race for the White House. The president now backing his vice president, Kamala Harris.
It means President Biden's decade-long Washington career comes to an end, and it truly is an extraordinary move. He is the first sitting president to not seek re-election since President Lyndon B. Johnson.
And the first to do it so late in the election cycle. Eyewitness News anchor Pedro Rivera joins us once again.
Yeah, LBJ was 7 months before the election. President Biden about 100 days.
Right.
So a big difference there. But momentum seems to have shifted a bit. I mean, the Democrats, they seem to be re-energized, right? Since that announcement, donating more than $50 million in just 7 hours since the president made his decision. It appeared prior to Sunday there was a chance the 81-year-old would try to stay in the race. But at 1:46 Sunday afternoon, it all changed. This is the statement from Biden that he released yesterday afternoon. It reads in part, quote, "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term." Biden then quickly endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, writing on social media, "My very first decision as the party nominee back in 2020 was to pick Kamala Harris as my vice president, and it's the best decision I've made. Today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year." Harris accepted the endorsement, writing, "I am honored to have the president's endorsement, and my intention is to earn and win this nomination. I will do everything in my power to unite the Democratic Party and unite our nation to defeat Donald Trump and his extreme Project 2025 agenda." On the other side of the aisle, Republicans, including the party's nominee Donald Trump, have been calling for Biden to step down from the White House immediately, releasing this statement, reading in part, "Crooked Joe Biden was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve and never was. We will suffer greatly because of his presidency, but we will remedy the damage he has done very quickly." Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance is expected to address Biden's decision on the campaign trail today. Right now, the president is still recovering from COVID at his vacation home in Delaware. We are expecting to hear from him soon, and of course, we'll bring you that as soon as we get it.
Yeah, President Biden planning to address the nation at some point this week in such a consequential speech he is about to deliver. Pedro, thank you. Meanwhile, still a lot up in the air. Still unclear this morning if there will be any major challenge to Ms. Harris. Attention already turning to who she could choose as a running mate, though, and there are some names on a short list. But before all of that, VP Harris must secure the delegates that she needs to become the presidential nominee. Eyewitness News reporter Phil Tate live in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, outside of the Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries' office. Phil, what do we know?
Yeah, and there's been no immediate endorsement from Representative Hakeem Jeffries. This as President Joe Biden has stepped aside and Kamala Harris looks to be at the top of the ticket and to lead the party this election cycle. But the big question right now is what comes next. She's going to have to garner the support from the party and to get the votes from the more than 4,700 delegates ahead of this convention. Now, what does this mean? These are the people that had backed Biden this past when he was in the race, and these are the people from the elected officials, former presidents, and other party elders known as superdelegates. Now, while Joe Biden has endorsed Harris, he believes she is the right person to take over the job as president, become his successor, and challenge Trump. Even with the president's backing, it remains unclear if Harris will become the nominee or what process the Democratic Party would take to select an alternative. While there is no guarantee, so far no one has said they will challenge her, and those who may be considering may be some of the same Democrats she is now considering asking to be her running mate. Now, some of the leading Democrats that could be Harris's potential VP pick: New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and PA Governor Josh Shapiro. Now take a listen as we spoke with a political analyst about Harris garnering support from her party to secure the Democratic nomination.
There is no formal mechanism to commit them at this stage. They will cast votes at the convention, and they are free to vote their conscience. And in fact, there is a clause in the Democratic rule book that says that they must do their best to try to mirror the sentiments of the people who voted in the primaries.
Now, here at home, the New York State Democratic Committee has endorsed Harris, but there's been no immediate endorsement from Representative Hakeem Jeffries or Senator Chuck Schumer. We're in Fort Greene this morning. I'm Phil Tate, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, thanks so much, Phil. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy and New York Governor Kathy Hochul are among the Democrats endorsing Kamala Harris to lead the Democratic ticket. Eyewitness News reporter Lindsay Tuckman live outside Governor Hochul's office on the east side. Lindsay?
Charlene, the endorsements came in very quickly after that announcement was made yesterday. And for the most part, local Democrats did fall in line supporting Vice President Kamala Harris to run for president. And that Harris campaign was quick to capitalize on that, sharing this list of elected officials from across the country that they say are giving their full-throated support to the vice president. And as you mentioned, the governors, both of New York and New Jersey, are on this list as well with statements in support of Vice President Harris. They both were ardent supporters of President Biden, both supporters and fundraisers, and are now endorsing Vice President Harris. Other Democrats, though, across the country and both locally, are taking a more wait and see, a slower approach to it all, and at this point just praising Biden for his decision and thanking him for his service, but holding back at this point from fully endorsing Harris. Republican officials, as you might imagine, more critical of the decision overall. We do know, though, that the vice president spent hours yesterday reaching out to Democratic leaders to really shore up that support heading into the week. Now, in a statement, Governor Kathy Hochul said, quote, "Joe Biden is an American hero, a true statesman, and he'll go down in history as one of the greatest champions of working families our nation has ever known. As Democrats, our mission remains the same, doing everything in our power to defeat Donald Trump. When President Biden picked Kamala Harris to be his vice president, he unleashed incredible excitement for a new generation of political leadership. That same energy will carry us to November 5th with Vice President Harris leading our ticket." That being said, local congressional leaders as well sharing their opinions, but on both sides of the aisle.
What I can say is going forward, we have over 100 days until Election Day. We have a lot of time to be able to make sure we're making this case. And Vice President Harris have a candidate I believe can very well play an incredible contrast to former President Trump.
I'm not surprised after that debate performance a little over 3 weeks ago. Americans saw what they saw, which was a president who clearly would be unable to fulfill another term, let alone run for one.
Now, we are expecting to hear from the governor today. That's why we are outside of her Midtown office right now. She is holding a pre-planned event later this morning, but we do expect her to touch on her endorsement of Vice President Kamala Harris. Live on the east side, Lindsay Tuckman, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Lindsay, thank you. And while Biden's exit from the race wasn't totally unexpected, the Trump campaign will need to pivot now. Republican groups quickly released attack ads targeting Harris.
Warning. The following may upset liberals who don't want voters to know the truth about Kamala Harris.
Here's how ABC's Jonathan Karl describes the challenges Republicans may face with a new candidate on the Democratic side.
On the Republican side, you can clearly see some anxiety, clearly in the statements you've heard today from Donald Trump himself. That unity tone, gone. They were ready to run against Joe Biden, and frankly, you know, with all the attention on Joe Biden's age, now we have a new oldest party nominee in the history of American politics, and it's not Joe Biden, it's Donald Trump.
Meanwhile, Republicans have suggested Biden's decision to drop out will spark lawsuits from the right, challenging Democrats changing up state ballots. But election law experts have said Biden's decision shouldn't pose any legal issues.
Leaders from around the world also reacting to President Biden's decision to drop out of the 2024 presidential race. Ukrainian President Zelensky saying we will always be thankful for President Biden's leadership. The Chancellor of Germany saying Joe Biden has achieved a lot for his country, for Europe, and for the world.
And we want to give you a look at some of the front pages of the newspapers this morning. Take a look. The New York Times has a picture of President Biden with the headline, Biden bows out. The front page of the Wall Street Journal reads, Biden drops out, endorses Harris. And the front page of the New York Post has a photo of President Biden walking out of a room with the headline, The End.
At 6:40, we want to turn to some other news this morning, including breaking news out of New Jersey, where a fire has ripped through a home in Bayonne. It happened early this morning. Firefighters responding to the scene on West 32nd Street just before 4 this morning. Video from the scene shows these huge flames shooting from the house. So far, no word on injuries. Of course, authorities will now work to figure out what caused the fire. You're never more than 7 minutes away from weather and traffic. Let's get back to Brittany now and an update on the hot and humid forecast. Hey, Brittany.